So the 2025 NFL Draft's first round is finally in the books, and we know where these top prospects ended up. And I wanted to grade every single first round pick that happened in last night's draft. And make sure you're subscribed because we are going to rank every team's draft class when the draft finally concludes, as well as rank every team going into the 2025 season now that the offseason is pretty much over. So we're going to start things off with Cam Ward to the Tennessee Titans. This is just an easy A. They made the right decision. They desperately needed a franchise quarterback, and Cam Ward, in my opinion, was the only QB in this draft well worth of taking in the top 10, let alone with the number 1 overall pick. He definitely raises their ceiling going forward. He's going to inherit an offensive-minded head coach in Brian Callahan, a team that paid a lot of money for a wide receiver one last offseason in Calvin Ridley. They also picked up Tyler Lockett this offseason as well. It's just a trend that these veteran wide receivers end up in Tennessee, like DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Robert Woods, etc. He's going to have 2 solid running backs in Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, in a team that has invested into the offensive line over time, with Peter Skoronski and J.C. Latham being their most recent 2 first round picks. So yeah, I'm going to give this pick an A. They made the right decision. If they traded down and maybe took somebody that didn't really expand their ceiling long term, I think I would have docked them a little bit there, but they made the right pick here. It's an easy A. And it was kind of weird that we had no draft trades leading up to the NFL draft, and then Adam Schefter reported that we're going to see fireworks on draft night, and we did, with the 2nd overall pick was traded by the Cleveland Browns to the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for basically the 5th overall pick. So they moved down 3 spots. They got the Jaguars 2nd rounder at 36. They got pick 126, and they got a 2026 first rounder as well. The Jaguars got some later picks in this draft as well, but they trade up 3 spots to get Travis Hunter. We thought they could maybe go Ted McMillan at 5 or Ashton Genty at 5, and they said, no, we're going to get somebody that we view as a generational player in this class. I may be a little bit aggressive with this grade, but I'm going to give it an A+ for Jacksonville, because honestly, I don't think there's a player that would fit this team more than Travis Hunter, and you're looking at the best player in this draft. Cam Ward isn't the best player in this draft. He's the best quarterback in this draft, and that's why he went number 1 overall. But if the Titans had a quarterback and they were picking number 1, they would have taken Travis Hunter, who could play both sides of the field, something we've truly never seen at the NFL level. The GM of the Jaguars, James Gladstone, the new GM, said that he expects Travis Hunter to be a starter on both sides of the field. If Travis Hunter could be a top 20 corner and maybe a top 25 receiver, that is well worth a first round pick this year and a first round pick next year. And you expect this team to be better next year with a new head coach, continuing development of Trevor Lawrence, and then you hope to be at least in the playoff picture, so you're not going to give up a first round pick in the top half of the 2026 draft. So this was a very aggressive move for a new GM and a new head coach, but this gives Trevor Lawrence another weapon on the offensive side of the field with Brian Thomas Jr., who was an elite rookie last year, and it also gives you somebody that could be an elite corner for you, and now you have some great defensive playmakers there with the 2022 number 1 overall pick in Trayvon Walker, with Joshua Hines-Allen, and now Travis Hunter. I love this for Jacksonville. So at number 3, the New York Giants did not take a quarterback here. They ended up taking Abdul Carter. Similar to my Cam Ward grade, I'm just going to give this an A. If I think they made the right decision and it wasn't really too hard for them to think about it, I'm just going to give them an A, because Abdul Carter is the best pass rusher in this class. I was a little bit shocked when they picked up Kayvon Thibodeau's 5th-year option after this and they didn't entertain trading him, but now they're going to have just an elite defensive line. It's one of the best in the NFL. Carter is going to join Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, who they traded for last offseason, and Kayvon Thibodeau, who could still tap into that potential of being a recent top 10 overall pick just a few years ago. The Giants did end up addressing quarterback later in the draft, in which we'll get to, but I do think they made the right decision here, selecting Abdul Carter, who can be an elite pass rusher for them next year and could be one of the best in the NFL by the end of this rookie contract. Same story here at number 4 for the New England Patriots. I'm going to give Will Campbell here a A. You got to protect Drake May. This was one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL last year, and they desperately needed to add some top-end talent either on the exterior or on the interior. And no matter where Will Campbell plays, I think he's going to be a great player in the NFL. He was the best offensive lineman in this class for a reason. And yeah, people are going to dock him for these short arms, and maybe he's going to have to be a guard. Who cares if he's going to be an elite guard or an all-pro guard one day? You need somebody that can protect Drake May. He's going to have no time to throw to Stephon Diggs or any of the receivers there. They could have made a little bit of a shocking pick. Maybe they take Mason Graham. Maybe they took Ashton Genty or Ted McMillan, but I do believe they made the right decision taking Will Campbell. So I'm also giving this an A. So at number 5 here, this is the trade down with the Cleveland Browns, where they ended up taking Mason Graham out of Michigan. And there were reports that they wanted to trade down even more. And the reason why they had to give up on a generational player in Travis Hunter to trade down is because they're still feeling the effects of the Deshaun Watson trade. This team does not have a lot of depth on their team right now because of all the draft capital they gave up for Deshaun Watson, who's been, yeah, we know, as like the worst trade asset of all time. So they had to accumulate more draft picks, which I don't hate that idea. It's just, yeah, you could have had Travis Hunter on your team. So I'm going to dock them a little bit for that. I'm going to give this grade a B, the worst in the top 5. If you look into the advanced numbers for Mason Graham, he doesn't feel like he's that much better than a Walter Nolan or Derek Harmon or even an Omar Norman Watt, who's going to go in day 2. And they took him here at number 5. He's still a really good player. He's going to add to this defensive line even more with Myles Garrett and now him there. And Isaiah McGuire, who had a very productive 2024 season, but I just think this would be so much better if you had Travis Hunter as a corner and a receiver for you. I get why they did this, but I'm still going to dock them. It's just all trickling down from the Deshaun Watson trade. So yeah, it's a B. At number 6, the Las Vegas Raiders took a running back. They took Ashton Jeanty, joining Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley as some running backs that were taken in the top 10. And I'm going to give this a B for them as well. I mean, this team is looking for a running back. They didn't address running back in the trade market, in free agency, and maybe they didn't fall in love with anybody that they could take in the 2nd round, 3rd round, or 4th round. But this team also has so many holes on its roster, because I think why you would take Ashton Jeanty if he's inheriting an elite offensive line, like similar to what Jahmyr Gibbs inherited in Detroit. That's why you could take Jahmyr Gibbs in the 1st round, because he was joining one of the best offensive line units. That's why you can go out and make Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back in the NFL, because he's inheriting one of the best offensive line units. The Raiders' offensive line has definitely improved over time. We'll see if they're going to extend Colton Miller. But this offensive line is far from being an elite one at the moment. So I do wonder how Ashton Jeanty is going to gel in right away, because now he's the 2nd highest paid running back in the NFL. And we'll see how he's going to improve there, because this team could have added a defensive lineman, an offensive lineman, a corner, a receiver. They have so many more needs that I think are just more important positions at the moment. I love Ashton Jeanty as a player. I wish he went to a team maybe like Chicago that has a much better offensive line unit, but this is still a great player. I'm just going to dock it a little bit because I think they had bigger needs at the moment. And the Jets at number 7 took Armand Membu out of Missouri. I'm going to give this an A as well. Honestly, you're going to see a trend throughout my grades. If you take an offensive lineman, I'm going to give it a good grade, especially around the range where they're expected to go in, because you can never have enough offensive linemen. And the Jets have now really filled out their offensive line and could turn into one of the best units in the NFL. You took Fashanu in the 1st round last year. He had a productive rookie year. Elijah Vera Tucker was a 1st round pick a few years ago. He's been improving over time. Joe Tippmann, John Simpson. And now you're adding Armand Membu. Breece Hall, Braylon Allen are going to have a great line to run behind, and I think they can have very productive 2025 seasons. Justin Fields is going to have a ton of time to throw. Yeah, the Jets could have used another weapon out wide, because it's really just Garrett Wilson at the moment. They could have thought about Loveland or Warren or Ted McMillan here, but I think this is the right pick, because the wide receivers can come. Maybe they take one on day number 2. And now Justin Fields may have the best weapons and the best line he's ever had in his career. So at number 8, a little bit of a shocker here. The Panthers did not go defense. They had one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive unit in the NFL last year, but they took Ted McMillan out of Arizona. I'm going to give this an A-. The reason I'm not going to give it an A is because, yeah, they need defensive players, and basically they could have taken any defensive player in this draft, not named Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, or Mason Graham. But I do believe that there was way too much negative stuff coming out about Ted McMillan. I do believe he could be a true wide receiver 1 in this league and could be that X receiver for Bryce Young, something he hasn't had in his career so far. Yeah, Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette have shown flashes, but Ted McMillan is way better of a prospect than those guys, and that's going to allow them to be guarded by lesser tier cornerbacks and defensive backs by opposing teams. Ted McMillan can draw the defensive attention, but he can win one-on-ones. He's got a great contested catch radius, and he could be that wide receiver 1 that Bryce Young needs throughout the development of his rookie contract. So I'm going to give it an A-, because I do think there was also a drop-off in defensive talent after Graham, Carter, and Hunter. Continuing my trend of just liking offensive lineman picks, the Saints at number 9, they didn't take Shedeur Sanders, thank God. They ended up taking Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. I'm going to give this an A. Like Will Campbell, Banks could be a offensive tackle for you, or it could be bumped inside. They spent a 1st round pick on an offensive lineman last year until Elise Fuaga, so I like that they're building up the trenches here for whatever their team is going to be down the road, because this team right now is not going to accomplish anything. Derek Carr's already hurt, and they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL in 2025, but when they find that next quarterback, when they find those long-term assets, they're going to be playing behind just big guys on that offensive line, and that's going to be started with Fuaga and Kelvin Banks Jr. I'm sure the Bears really wanted to take Ashton Jeanty at number 10, and that was probably my favorite fit in the draft. They ended up taking Colston Loveland, the tight end prospect out of Michigan. I'm going to give this a B+. It wasn't the biggest need in the world by any means. They could have maybe addressed offensive line even more, but Membu and Banks were off the board. Maybe they could have went defensive line if they really liked Walter Nolan or Mykel Williams, but they take the tight end out of Michigan, and this makes me think that either Cole Kmet isn't in their long-term plans, or Ben Johnson really wants to run 2 tight end sets, and Loveland, I think, was the best tight end prospect in this draft, and there's a reason why he went ahead of Tyler Warren, and this is just going to give Caleb Williams another weapon out there. Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. He's going to have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet to throw to out wide. The running backs could be a little bit better. They do have 2 second-round picks. Maybe they draft one there as well, but it's a much improved offensive line. Drew Dahlman, Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, all were added this offseason. They drafted Darnell Wright in the top 10 in 2023. There's going to be no excuses this year for Caleb Williams because he's also going to be behind one of the best offensive-minded coaches now in Ben Johnson. At 11 here, I'm going to dock the Niners a little bit. Maybe this is also another aggressive grade. I'm going to give them a C+, my first C here in the draft. I just liked a lot of guys on the board rather than Michael Williams. I don't know if they were going to be aggressive enough and take a Josh Connerly or a Josh Simmons here because they do need offensive line help, and I'm sure they would have loved a Membu or Banks to fall to them, but I also like Walter Nolan and Derek Harmon a lot more than Michael Williams, and if you wanted to take a pure edge rusher, I would have preferred Mike Green. Maybe you could put Jahad Campbell or Jalen Walker out there, or I think for this system specifically, Shamar Stewart would have worked out as well. So yeah, I'm going to give it a C+. I just wasn't this high on Michael Williams, and I wonder if they could have traded down. At 12, the Dallas Cowboys took Tyler Booker, the offensive guard out of Alabama, who did not allow a single sack last year. I'm going to give it an A. I'm glad the Cowboys didn't take a running back. If they took a Marion Hampton here, man, I would have given them a pretty low grade. Yeah, I would have loved Ted McMillan on this team as well. Maybe they could have traded down. Maybe they could have really fell in love with a receiver. But if they weren't going to go skill position route, I either wanted an edge rusher or an offensive lineman for them, and they took Tyler Booker. Now, 3 of their 5 offensive linemen are named Tyler Booker, Tyler Guyton, and Tyler Smith. And maybe they're also going to draft a running back later in the draft, which is what we all advised them to do. And that running back is going to have a very solid and much improved offensive line going forward. The Dolphins took Kenneth Grant here at number 13. I'm going to give this a B-. I didn't love Kenneth Grant in this draft. I liked Walter Nolan and Derek Harmon a little bit more. And the Dolphins here at 13 took a position of need. They definitely needed a defensive lineman. I also wonder if they wanted Tyler Booker, or they could have taken Gray Zabel here, or a different offensive lineman. Malachi Starks was still on the board, and he went much later in the first round, and they could have tried to fulfill the loss of Javon Holland. What's going on with Jalen Ramsey there? This could be a very weak secondary next season, and Jedi Barron was on the board as well. I just liked a lot more players that were on the clock for Miami than Kenneth Grant. The Colts here at 14 took Tyler Warren. I'm going to give this an A. I thought there was no shot that Tyler Warren was going to fall to them, and he's really completed this offensive skill set unit around either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. You got Pittman, Downs, Mitchell, Pierce, and now Tyler Warren with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. This is a very talented skill unit, and this team desperately has looking for a reliable tight end ever since Jack Doyle basically left them, and it's been forever since they've had that guy, and Tyler Warren can be that guy for them going forward, and there's going to be no excuses for Shane Steichen next year, as well as Anthony Richardson. This is a big year for Anthony Richardson in year 3. At 15, the Atlanta Falcons took Jalen Walker. I'm going to give this an A. Jalen Walker could have gone as high as number 4 to the Patriots, maybe 8 to the Panthers. The Falcons got him at 15. If they went with an offensive player here, I probably would have given them an F. They desperately needed defense. They took Jalen Walker, one of the best defensive players in this class. Can be an edge rusher, can be a linebacker, something they desperately needed. It's an A. And at 16, the Arizona Cardinals, another team that I thought could have traded down. Could they have gone corner, receiver, defensive line? They went with the latter, and they took Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. I'm also going to give this an A for them. I thought Nolan could have gone much higher in this draft. I really liked him to San Francisco there at 11, and I think Arizona got good positional value and just good player value there at 16. And at 17, Shamar Stewart to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm actually going to give this a C+, because Shamar Stewart is a polarizing prospect in this draft. He only had 2 sacks last year at Texas A&M, and can you tap into that potential, which he does have? He's a freakish athlete, and can he be an elite edge rusher for you going forward? It hasn't really worked out with Miles Murphy so far, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago, and the Bengals are kind of on a stretch with 3 bad first-round picks in a row, so let's see if Shamar Stewart can end that. I'm going to give it that C+, though, because I think there's too much risk here for a team that I think should have taken a safer prospect here on the edge, and that could have been Jahad Campbell or Mike Green. The Seahawks desperately needed an interior offensive lineman, and they took one here at number 18, Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. I'm giving it an A. It's just a reoccurring trend here. I think that's just what teams should do. If your offensive line has any holes or weaknesses, and there's a good enough player on the board where it's not a massive reach, you take that player. Gray Zabel was definitely a pre-draft riser. Nobody really thought of him as a first-round pick at the end of the college season, but people fell in love with him. And Seattle needs to protect Sam Darnold, who they just paid a lot of money to. Cross, Lucas, and Zabel, it's a foundation. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Emeka Egbuka here at 19. I thought this was very surprising. I'm going to give this a B-. Not the biggest need in the world at all. I thought they could have gone on the defensive side of the ball, and you had some elite players there. You had Jahdae Barron. You had Malachi Starks. You had Jahad Campbell, Mike Green, Donovan Ezeraku, all still on the board, and you went Emeka Egbuka. That makes me think that Mike Evans doesn't have a lot in the tank. Maybe Chris Godwin's injury, a little bit worse than we thought, and they're not fully bought in on Jalen McMillan. But you also have Cade Otton. I just don't really get the need of spending a first-round pick on Egbuka, but maybe in 3 years, he's going to be their wide receiver 1. But I still feel like they have this window right now, and I think they could have added a true blue chip defensive player in this draft because a lot of them fell. And one of those guys that fell, Jahdae Barron, number 20 to the Denver Broncos. I really wanted my Pittsburgh Steelers to take him. I'm going to give this an A+, my second A+ so far. You had Travis Hunter at 2. I think Jahdae Barron, for the positional value, his talent, he could have gone in the top 10. You could have made an argument at number 5 to Jacksonville if they were there. He ended up going 20 to Denver, a team that doesn't really need a corner. They had the DPOY last year in Patrick Surtain. You have Riley Moss, and now you're going to have Jahdae Barron with Brandon Jones, Talise Fuaga. You signed Dre Greenlaw this offseason as well. This is one of the best defensive units in the NFL. It's an easy A+. So that left my Pittsburgh Steelers there at 21. A lot of people thought this could be the Shedeur Sanders pick. Like I said, I really wanted Jahdae Barron. They took Derek Harmon. I'm going to give this a B. I do like Derek Harmon a ton. It's not the sexiest pick in the world. It's not the flashiest pick. It's pretty boring, but it's something of need. Now the Steelers also are going to have one of the best defensive line units in the NFL. It's up there with the Lions, the Giants, and some other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, because now you got TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, who doesn't have a lot of time left, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, and Alex Highsmith. That is an elite unit. And I'm really glad they didn't take a quarterback. If they took Shedeur Sanders here, I would have gave it a really low grade. It would have felt like Kenny Pickett 2.0. I'm crossing my fingers that thinking it's Jalen Milroe somehow in this draft. It's probably not happening though. And at 22, also I think a little bit of a shocker since they signed Najee Harris, the LA Chargers selected Omarion Hampton out of UNC. I like Omarion Hampton a ton, and this is a much improved offensive line, and he could be their bell cow post Najee Harris because it's only a 1-year deal. But I'm going to give it a C. I honestly think the Chargers did not need to take Hampton here. Maybe they would have taken Emeka Egbuka, but they could have taken maybe Luther Burden or Matthew Golden. They need another receiver out there with Vlad McConkey because it's Quinn Johnston. Josh Palmer ended up going to Buffalo this offseason. You brought back Mike Williams. It's not really the best unit in the world. I know Jim Harbaugh wants to run the football, and Omarion Hampton is great. I think you can got somebody equal talent, maybe on day 2 or day 3. You could have taken a receiver here or somebody on the defensive side of the ball, maybe a defensive lineman as well. But maybe they would have ended up taking Harmon, Grant, or Nolan, but all of them were off the board. At 23, the Green Bay Packers finally took a wide receiver in the first round, something that hasn't happened in over 2 decades. The draft was also held in Green Bay, so maybe they wanted to give the fans something they showed up for, and they took Matthew Golden, another combine standout here out of Texas. I'm going to give this a C+. I also like Luther Burden a little bit more than Matthew Golden, who is going to be that deep threat for them. He's going to basically replace Christian Watson in that role because his future is not really bright in Green Bay anymore. And Golden could be a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he's that much better than what they currently had in that room. I thought they could have gone with a corner as well, and I hope it works out because I think the fans really wanted them to take a wide receiver in round 1, something that they were hammering in the Aaron Rodgers era and at the start of the Jordan Love era, but I just don't know if I love Golden that much in Green Bay. So at 24, the Minnesota Vikings took Donovan Jackson, the offensive lineman out of Ohio State. I'm actually going to give this a B. It's my first non-A for an offensive lineman in this draft. I thought Minnesota had to trade down, and I thought they could have gone Donovan Jackson early in the second round if they traded down with the Giants, who we know ended up trading up for a quarterback, or maybe the Atlanta Falcons, like the Rams. We'll get to that trade in a little bit. I thought the Vikings could have done that because they only have 4 picks in this draft. They invested a lot into the offensive line this offseason. Ryan Kelly, Will Fries to protect JJ McCarthy. And you can never have enough offensive linemen. Like I said, I'm just docking this grade because I really thought they should have traded down. And here it is. The New York Giants traded up with the Houston Texans to select a quarterback, Jackson Dart, out of Ole Miss. They traded the 34th overall pick, the 99th overall pick, and a 2026 third. If you look at what the Falcons had to give up to trade for pick 26, this is a steal for the Giants. But I'm going to give this a D+. I just don't understand their timeline. I think Jackson Dart could be a fine enough quarterback one day, and nobody really thought that he could be a franchise quarterback all year at Ole Miss, but it felt like everybody started to fall in love with him when he was no longer playing any games, and you're just looking at the highs more so than the lows. And it does feel like the Giants got their guy. Maybe the meeting with Shedeur Sanders didn't go all too well, but I just don't feel like they're on a coherent timeline right now because you signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. You basically gave Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen an ultimatum that if they don't win this year, they're getting fired. So if Jackson Dart is playing for them this year, it's either Russ got hurt, Jameis got hurt, or they're playing bad enough where they're just giving Jackson Dart a shot, and they're going to be left with a new GM and new head coach next year who may not even like Jackson Dart as your franchise quarterback going forward. I honestly thought if you were going to trade up to 25, you take one of the blue chippers that are still on the board. Maybe it's Jahad Campbell, maybe it was Josh Simmons or Josh Connerly, and you're trying to win next year with Russell Wilson. Maybe you try to get Emeka Egbuka and get another weapon out there for Russ, because if you make the playoffs, then maybe you have a chance at keeping your jobs. But I just don't think Jackson Dart is really going to play meaningful games for the Giants next year unless their quarterbacks get hurt. And like I said, what if the new regime does even like Jackson Dart, and this could feel like a little bit of a waste of a pick? So yeah, I'm giving it a D+, maybe a little bit harsh, and I hope I'm proven wrong. But that is not going to be my worst grade in this draft. It's going to be to the Atlanta Falcons here at 26. I'm going to give this a D. They traded back up into the first round. They gave up pick 46, pick 242, and a 2026 first round pick to the LA Rams for pick 26 and pick 101. So yeah, they got another third out of this, great, but you traded up to take James Pierce Jr. I think it would have made so much more sense to get Jahad Campbell. Imagine getting Jahad Campbell and Jalen Walker in the same draft, or imagine getting Malachi Starks, maybe taking a chance on Will Johnson if you were confident enough about the knee injury going forward, but you gave away next year's first round pick, which is fine if you had maybe confidence that you could be a playoff team next year. You weren't a playoff team this year. What if Michael Penix is just bad next year? What if he gets hurt and Kirk Cousins is no longer on this team and you just gave up maybe a top 10 pick next year for James Pierce Jr.? I think this was way too risky for the Atlanta Falcons, and I don't think James Pierce Jr. is safe enough to really make this worth it. So yeah, I'm going to give this a D. It's my worst pick here in the first round. I would have preferred Malachi Starks, Jahad Campbell, Mike Green all over James Pierce Jr. in this situation. The only reason why it's not an F is because they took somebody on the defensive side of the ball, but man, there is so much risk to this trade up for Atlanta. And it happened again, man. The Ravens ended up getting another blue chip player to fall to them at 27. This is Kyle Hamilton 2.0. They took Malachi Starks, the best safety prospect out of Georgia, at 27. It's an A+ for me. Can we stop having this happen? As a Steelers fan, I just don't want to see these blue chip prospects fall to Baltimore late in the draft, or guys that should go in the top half that go in the bottom half. They didn't even really need a safety either, right? You have Kyle Hamilton, you have Darius Washington, you have Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins in the secondary. Now this is arguably one of the best, if not the best, secondary unit in the NFL now that they added Malachi Starks. Yeah, I don't think Mason Rudolph is going to do too well against the secondary next year, whoever the quarterback is for the Steelers. And at 28, the Detroit Lions took Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. I'm going to give this a C+. It's similar to maybe my Michael Williams grade earlier, as I'm just not super high on Tyleik Williams, and I thought there were some other edge rushers on the board that could have made more sense for Detroit. Maybe they were going to take Jahad Campbell if they didn't feel like there was a positional fit at that moment, but they could have ended up going with Mike Green or Donovan Ezeraku, two players I liked a lot more than Tyleik. At 29, the Washington Commanders took an offensive lineman, Josh Connerly, out of Oregon. I'm giving this an A. It's my trend with these offensive linemen, and I just love what the Commanders have done this offseason. Yeah, you went out and you got a weapon in Deebo Samuel for Jaden Daniels, but you're also protecting him even more. We saw how much this offensive line felt hurt by Sam Cosmi's injury against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, and now you add Laramie Tunsil and Josh Connerly on the exterior for Jaden Daniels next year. That's a home run offseason for the Commanders front office. Yeah, it's an A. The Bills at 30 took Maxwell Harrison, a combine standout out of Kentucky. I'm actually going to give this a C just because I like some other corners on the board. I thought you could have taken a chance on Will Johnson, but maybe teams are really scared of that long-term knee injury. I like Savon Revel on the board as well. I think Troy Amos could have made a little bit more sense, or maybe taking a chance on Benjamin Morrison, and that's why I'm going to dock them a little bit here. But I am glad they took somebody on the defensive side of the field. And like I said before with the Baltimore Ravens, can we stop having elite prospects fall to the Philadelphia Eagles? They got Jahad Campbell at 31. They traded away a fifth to move up one spot with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they take Jahad Campbell. So they got Zach Bond on their team. They brought him back. You're going to have Jahad Campbell that could be an edge rusher, that could be a linebacker. I know he's not from Georgia, but come on, NFL. Can we stop having these guys fall to Philadelphia? The Bengals could have taken him higher. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers could have taken him higher. Heck, the Atlanta Falcons, who just traded back up into the first round, could have taken him. Could have taken him twice, and he falls to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's an A+. It's an elite talent here at 31. Can we stop having this happen to Howie Roseman? And then at 32, the Kansas City Chiefs took Josh Simmons, who I thought should have gone much higher in this draft. I think if he's fully healthy going forward, he may be the second or third best offensive lineman in this class. He went at 32. So I'm actually going to give this an A+ because I think the Chiefs got a steal here. I thought he could have gone much higher in the top half of the first round because all indications show that he's going to be healthy next year. And maybe Jalen Moore doesn't work out, or he's just going to eventually replace Jawan Taylor maybe as soon as week 1. And you had to protect Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with what I said in this video down below. Or if you want to give me your first round draft grades, hey, please let me know down below. Make sure you are subscribed for more NFL content throughout the rest of the offseason and leading into the 2025 regular season. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.